Hey guys, welcome back to Ben and Brewing's channel. Today's video, we're doing a grain to glass of the iGulu. If you haven't seen our first video, we'll link that below where we unbox the unit. Again, as a reminder, iGulu sent us this unit for our review at no charge. We do get to keep it. However, there is no affiliate link. There is a $100 coupon code linked below if you decide to purchase it. We're gonna brew one of their test kits. We're going to taste it and let you know, is this really worth the money? Hey guys, we are back today with the iGulu, which is a countertop brewing device that was sent to us by iGulu to do a review on. This is a new product that just launched with their Kickstarter, and they sent us one free of charge for us to do a review on. Keep in mind, we do get to keep it afterwards, but the review that we do, our opinions are going to be our own. They're not going to see it prior to us posting the video, and as you've seen with a lot of our reviews, we tend to be brutally honest with this stuff. And there's also a $100 coupon that is provided. It'll be linked below. If you do want to purchase the machine, it'll give you $100 off. If we feel it's a good product, we will recommend it. Today is going to be the real test of actually brewing on it. All right, so we got our iGulu out. We've got it turned on. And actually, real quick, if you guys haven't seen our unboxing of the iGulu, that will be linked below as well. Make sure you check that out so you can see everything that comes with the unit itself. They did send us 3 different recipes to try out and taste, which we're going to be trying one of them today. We've got a Bavarian wheat, we've got a pale ale, and we've got an amber lager. I may just go for the pale ale today, actually. Seems like a good base to start with. And we've never brewed on it before. We just barely turned it on. There's an app that I've downloaded that I'm going to link up so we can go through the brew day, and hopefully it's relatively painless. We'll see how the thing operates. All right, let's open it up. I'm wondering if I should sync my phone to the app first. Let's see what comes in the kit. We've got some dried malt extract. We've got priming sugar. So for carbonation, more priming sugar, some more priming sugar. This is going to be a really dry beer. Or they're using that to boost the alcohol and keep it dry. And we've got our dried brewing yeast. This is 0.07 ounces, so this is obviously much smaller than a regular 5-gallon batch would be because you are brewing, I think this is like a gallon of beer. So put that aside, and then, oh, it's an RFID sticker. So this is what you'll use to scan on the sensor here on the unit, which tells it which beer you're doing so it knows what temperature to ferment at, and I'm assuming how much time it's going to take. So we'll put that aside for now. And then there's 3 little tiny hop extracts. Natural hop aromatic extract. We have Mosaic, we have 2 Mosaic, excuse me, and a 25. Whatever hop that is. So these are obviously extracts from it. So brewing in this machine, it doesn't look like there's any boil. You are going to mix, I'm assuming, the water, the priming sugar, the hops in there and let it ferment. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to pair my phone with the app first off. See if that gives us some more instructions. So there's our iGulu app. Add device. And it picked it right up. Connecting. Yes. Well, that was easy. Okay, set Wi-Fi. All right, so it's synced pretty quickly on the Bluetooth. Now it's sending Wi-Fi info. Successfully connected. Product manual and brewing. Okay. All right, so RFID recognition, custom brewing, keg cooling, and sparkling water. So I had a question of can you do sparkling water in there? The answer is yes. However, you will need to buy the additional CO2 tank. And my understanding is that compatible tanks are like the SodaStream. Those will work with this unit, and I'm sure there's other less expensive options out there as well. So interestingly, and I mentioned this in the prior video, the iGulu didn't ship with a manual in the box, which I thought was kind of weird. But it could be because they're adding features and updating things, and so a paper manual that's shipped out would be out of date potentially with future software updates. And so I downloaded kind of the most current version. As I'm going through here and reading it, it does say to follow the instructions in the app because that will be most up to date, so not to use the paper manual. So we'll be going into the app to finish kind of the brewing. What's interesting too, with the ambient light that you see on the front, and I mentioned this in the last video that we did, where the color changes depending on what it's doing. So here's kind of the key for it. So if the light is orange, then it is in the middle of fermentation. When it turns green, that means it's cooling down. When it's white, as it is now, it's on standby. And if it's lightless, that means it's turned off. I think that last one was pretty self-explanatory. Okay, well, we're gonna move to the app then and see if we need to do a software update. And it might actually have an update. So let's see if we can go to the settings, not the toolkit, settings. Connection, language. Let's look for a system update. Check for update, yes. A new version is detected, update now, yes. I'm sure that'll make the beer taste much better. You gotta have current software. Downloading. Okay. I think it's time for a beer as we wait. Cheers. Yeah, I'm in the app. So when you go in and you've got it paired with the app, so it immediately connects and it's actually pretty fast. There's a couple options for operation. RFID recognition, which I'm assuming then you can scan these on your phone if your phone has RFID, or you could probably use a sensor there. Custom brewing, which is a feature that's supposed to be coming. So I did reach out to iGulu about their brewing kits, and right now the system uses their kits to brew the beers, and they only have 3 at the moment, but they're developing more. There's more that are coming. There's supposed to be an option where you can do custom brewing, where you brew your own recipes. Now, I wasn't able to get a lot of information on that at this time because they're still releasing updates, and I mean, this is like a brand new product. They're constantly adding features to it. So more information to come, and we'll update as we hear more about that. The other nice thing with this system is that you can put kegs in it and serve from. So the 5-liter kegs, like the Heineken kegs, you can actually put in there, it will cool it down, and you can actually serve from it. And there's a built-in refrigeration unit, a DC compressor, that will cool things down for both fermentation and for serving. And again, sparkling water is an option on here. So you'd need to have the CO2 cartridge for that, obviously, but quite a few options. How's our update coming? While we're waiting for the update, what's interesting is when I emailed the company with some questions and things because they sent us the unit, as I mentioned before, and they were actually very responsive to my inquiry and my questions, and it sounds like they're very passionate about the product itself. Now, I'm not sure how well this comes across on camera, but it is a beautiful unit, and it comes in black, white, and a mint, which kind of has a white front and then green sides, so it kind of matches any decor. Now, I don't know if their quick response was because they knew they'd sent us a unit for review and they were trying to be responsive, or if that's how the customer service is in real time for someone that purchases it. I can tell you that if they're that responsive across the board, this is a really good customer service oriented company. So time will tell, and if you have experience with this, definitely feel free to comment below and let us know what your experience is like, but so far it's been pretty good. We're still waiting for the update to download, but I had another thought with it. So as someone that brews, and for a lot of you people that do brew, I'm really curious as to how this operates, because or how the instructions work, or how this can take someone that doesn't brew, that is a novice brewer, maybe has never done it before, and how well it walks them through the process. Obviously, once you get it in there and it ferments it and it's going to maintain the temperature and it's going to serve it correctly, like that's all well and good. But I'm curious about, what about sanitization? We're not boiling it, so it's important to have things sanitized. We're not using whole hops, we're using a hop extract, which means you don't need to boil it. How well does that flavor come across in the finished product? Because we're really not treating it as a traditional brew. And I don't want to call this the microwave of brewing, but it does seem like a very fast way to do it. You throw the stuff in, you turn it on, and you're kind of done. How well does the beer actually turn out? And is there risk of infections and maintaining the system? And there's a lot of questions that I have as we're going through. So I'm excited that we finally got our hands on it. Okay, so update is complete. We have directions on the back of our ingredient kit. Prepare and clean the iGulu keg and add purified water up to the 116 ounce mark. Drip the hop extract into the water, then add the yeast. Add the malt extract without stirring. Seal the fermentation tank, place it in the iGulu machine, properly connect beer and gas tubes, and initiate the fermentation process using an RFID card or appropriate machine. Okay, so we need to get everything mixed up in here. Now, the one thing that it doesn't mention on here is sanitation. So for the purposes of what we're doing today, we're actually going to use Star San, which is kind of our favorite product to use. I've already got it pre-mixed in a spray bottle, so we're going to sanitize the inside of this before we add the water and make sure everything that's going to come in contact with the beer, especially since this is only cold side brewing, is going to be sanitized. All right, we're going to open this up. It came off a lot easier that time. Remove this. There we go. Now, it does say to use purified water, which I'm sure any spring water from the store would work fine. I think the main point is not to use tap water because it has chlorine in it, which would not be good for the yeast and could lend off flavors. We have reverse osmosis water, so our water is fine. It's a little weak spray. There we go. So we'll make sure this is nice and sanitized. Now, it did mention, let's look at the top of this here. So CO2, where is this little guy? Goes in there. So this is going to be the serving. And, this is going to be CO2. So this is inside. This hooks up to either an air pump or to your CO2 bottle, and that'll hook up to the second part here. So we will get that hooked up. That's nice and sanitized. There we go. So we're going to add our water up to 116 ounces. And then drip the hop extract. We got 3 packs of that. Rip it open. Wonder how this stuff smells. Woo! Smells like a hop. Actually, it smells quite fresh. For it being an extract, that's pretty good. There's 1. There's 2. This one's a little bit more liquid. That's interesting. The mosaic hops are real dark and kind of amber colored, but the 25 hop bitter extract was real cloudy. It almost looked like I'd put the yeast in there. Sprinkle in the yeast. Okay. Add malt extract without stirring. You know what? Something I noticed on the iGulu website, they have a chat. I wonder if I could chat them up real quick and ask and get clarification on it before we completely put this into the iGulu. So we're going to pause for a second. I'm going to see if they chat. That'll be a customer service test too, to see, as they're working through these details, is there somebody there that knows what they're doing and can actually help us through a brew day? That'd be nice. We will find out shortly. Okay, so I just chatted with iGulu from their website. Unfortunately, they're not here on the weekends, which makes sense, Monday through Friday. So I'm going to assume that the 3 packets of priming sugar they included, because it's not mentioned anywhere else in the process, and I can't see where else you would add it, because post-fermentation you're supposed to serve it. I'm going to go ahead and add it to our mixture, our wort that we've created, and we'll see how it turns out. Ooh, it smells malty. All right, and they said not to stir it, so I'm gonna sanitize this real quick. All right, apply the lock. Okay, I think we're sealed. Now we're gonna put it in the iGulu, so here we go. And there's a couple hoses to hook up with it. That goes in there. So we got this little guy. This is going to be the air or CO2, depending. So that hooks onto the lid. And then we've got this guy that I have sanitized. This will be the out, I'm assuming you serve from. Well, I don't know how else you could do it otherwise. In the top of the tap here, there is a metal cover that's actually magnetic. That guy pops out, and this little guy goes inside. How far down it goes, I don't know. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna be rude and turn my back on the camera here because I cannot see what's going on in here. Like, how does that even work? Like, how is this supposed to serve? All right, I gotta go back to the directions. Pull the tap handle to its full extent and insert. Ha ha ha. That makes sense. So you pull this forward and then the tube goes right in. There we go. And that clamps it in place. We'll push this down. Okay, so this is not a tap in the traditional sense, in that it really just has a clamp on it that pinches the tube closed. It also has a clamp on the outflow tube. I have clamped that down to prevent any beer from coming before we're ready to serve. So CO2 connection is hooked up, the pouring is hooked up, there is a vent on there to allow the gases to escape. So I think all we do now is put the lid on it and tell it to ferment. So we're going to put the lid on it and then take our RFID tag and we're going to scan it. And that immediately popped up with a pale ale. So 1 day at 16, 2 days at 18, 3 days at 20, and 3 days at 2. So 6 days at fermentation with a slow ramp up, probably for a diacetyl rest, and then a cold crash for 3 days. All right, let's hit brew. And it is orange, and it says it'll be ready in 9 days. And it has a pressure indicator on there. That's interesting to tell you what the current pressure is within the fermentation. Now I'm curious, because this is pressure fermentation, which means the beer should come out pretty clean and very fast, what pressure that will get up to. Will they let it get up to 2 bar? Because I think that's what it's rated to. Or will it only go up to 1 bar, about 15 psi? So we will see. So that was our brew day. That seemed pretty simple. We'll see how it comes out over the next 9 days or so. We'll give it a test and let you guys know our thoughts. Hey guys, quick interjection before we get to the tasting of the beer. I did want to mention that in our original video and earlier in this video, we talked about there was no affiliate link and the coupon code was for $100 off. We've kind of corrected that because more information has come out and they've actually opened up some of their program a little bit. So our coupon code actually now gets you $179 off of the unit, which is a phenomenal deal. I can't believe it's that much off. And there are affiliate links. So if you use our coupon code or use our link, we do get a commission off of the unit. That having been said, we will not be promoting a product that we do not believe in. We're going to give it an honest review, as you're going to see here shortly. All right, guys, we are back with a tasting of the pale ale brewed on the iGulu. We're doing it in our tasting room here, as seemed appropriate. We're going to dive right in and get a taste that we just poured off of the tap.
Yep.
And give you our thoughts on this kit.
I'm so excited.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh my gosh. Wow. That is really good.
That's puzzling. Not in a bad way.
You get floral notes. You get some citrus.
Definitely some citrus in there. That is fantastic. Carbonation is actually really good, the level of it, without being overly.
There's a lot of citrus in that. That is really good. And look at the color.
I mean, it's cloudy for sure, but it's not a yeasty cloudy.
No.
Which was one of the concerns I had, which we'll talk about that in a second.
It's got kind of a juicy flavor to it.
It is kind of juicy, yeah. I'm a little floored, frankly. Not that I was expecting to be bad by any stretch, but it's such a simple brew process. You throw it in and let it do its thing. I am pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
That's very sessionable, too. It doesn't taste like a homebrew beer like you get. We go to the homebrew club meetings and, you know, we get some really good beers from there, but there's some that aren't great. We've brewed some ourselves that aren't necessarily great. That is fast. I'm kind of speechless.
Yeah.
So forgive me because I know we're doing a video and we're supposed to be talking, but I'm speechless with how good that is. That is really good.
I want to preface this by saying if you watch any of our other videos, we are very honest about tasting. So you can tell if we like a beer and you can tell if we don't. I kind of didn't want to like it because it's too easy. Like, for all the labor of love we put into brewing a beer, and this took, throwing some things into a kettle and then just hitting go.
And our first brew day with it, as you've probably seen, is probably going to be way longer than necessary because we're still figuring out the equipment as new brewers do with new equipment. The next brew day will literally be 10 minutes. All right, so let me refocus. Let me regather. Holy cow, that was really good. I got to have another one.
I know, me too.
So this does a pressure fermentation, and it got up to about 28 psi, almost 2 full bar, which I was a little concerned with it because not all yeast can handle that much pressure when they're fermenting. Obviously, with what iGulu's doing, they've specifically chosen yeast that can handle the higher pressure, and it performed magnificently. And it's not as clean as I would expect, because when you pressure ferment, especially at higher temperatures, you can either overstress the yeast or stress the yeast enough where it's very, very clean. This doesn't have a clean. There's still some yeast profile in there, but not offensive, and not as you would at a home brew that, you know, you pour off that first tap and it's very yeasty. No, really good. The fermentation schedule, so it was supposed to slowly ramp up temperatures. Now, I believe that's really more designed for an indoor environment. We tested it in our brewery or the garage, and it was kind of colder weather out. So it was supposed to ramp up to 68 near the end of fermentation. It did not. It wasn't able to because it was too cool in the garage. So it only got up to about 60, 65, which I thought, well, I've heard some of the reviewers that have said that there's a heater in there that'll help to regulate temperature. That was not our experience. And from what I've seen, I don't believe there is a heater in there. There's no way to warm it up, only to cool it down, which isn't a bad thing as long as you're doing it in a controlled environment, but you need to be aware of that when you use it. What was interesting about the fermentation schedule with that is because it said it was going to be 9 days, and the last 3 of that 9 days, it was going to crash cool it to like 34 degrees to make everything drop out of suspension and to kind of let that excess pressure start to carbonate the beer. It didn't do that in our case. It actually went the full 9 days before it actually then crash cooled it. And that's because I think it was at a cooler temperature. It couldn't ramp up the temperature. So fermentation was a little bit slower. Now, you hook up the CO2 to the machine so it can add pressure to it. And I wonder, this is one of the questions I have, I emailed, I haven't heard back yet on it, if it actually tracks the progress of the fermentation based on the CO2 production. And so it automatically lengthened our fermentation schedule until it was the CO2 production dropped. If the machine does that, and I haven't seen that documented anywhere, but if it does that, that's some pretty serious sophistication. Yeah. And that is outstanding that they do that. It's not just based on a set schedule and a time. It actually adjusts for the fermentation. And you're dealing with a living, breathing thing. And there are variations across different types of yeasts and depending on your malt extractor, if you add too much water or too much of something. So for it to be able to adjust to make sure it's dialing it in so you get a consistent finished product, wow, that is incredible. So I haven't gotten an answer on that yet. So I don't know if it was a software glitch or kind of a happy accident, or if it really is tracking it. And I kind of feel like it's tracking it. Yeah. I will let you guys know when we hear. The other kind of neat thing, and we've heard some concerns from home brewers where when they brew, their significant other, their spouse, doesn't like the smell of fermenting beer. This unit did not give off any smell at all throughout the entire fermentation process. The only way I could really smell anything, I had to take the lid off of it and kind of stick my head in there. And then I could actually smell the active fermentation. But otherwise, with the lid on there and everything, it was completely no odor whatsoever. So if you're looking for a small space to brew with and you have a significant other that doesn't necessarily like the smell of a fermentation, it's a non-issue with this thing. I thought that was absolutely amazing. All right, so there are quite a few pros and cons with this, and as I mentioned before, we tend to be very critical of things, so these may be not an issue for you, or it may be an issue for you, but we really want to run the full gambit. It was actually fun playing around with it for the 12 days that it took fermentation to go through. Some of the neat things, pros. It's a great looking unit, and it really doesn't take up a whole lot of space on your countertop. And it looks nice. I mean, every time I walk by it, I'm like, I really want to pour off a pint. Like, it's very kind of satisfying. Obviously, I couldn't because it's still fermenting. So it was kind of fun to actually be able to do that first pull on it. Fermentations are super fast with this because it is pressure fermentation. It is regulating the temperature. So not only is the brew day fast, fermentation is pretty quick. And especially to get something that doesn't taste new. Sometimes beers, when they're too young, they kind of have a green taste or they just need a little more time to age. This particular one does not. It is fantastic, and it is very fresh, so I appreciate that. As I mentioned before, pressure fermentation, you're going to get clean fermentations out of it, and it's going to make it actually do faster, especially pushing close to that 2 bar. And the compressor on the chilling of it is relatively quiet. I don't know if you guys could hear on camera. I'm sure you just heard that noise behind you. It just kicked on. It's not that loud. It's just like a normal hum of kind of a refrigerator, like a mini fridge or a beer fridge. I mean, it's really not that loud. It has kind of a lower timbre. So it's not annoying by any stretch. You can hear it kick on, you hear it shut off. And it doesn't really go on that often, at least for us. It's well insulated. And the weather's been cooler for us. We're in Arizona, so I would love to see this thing, how it does in the summertime when, you know, our house temps get up to 80, 85. How well does it do? It is very solid and very well built. I've moved it a bunch of times during fermentation. You pick it up from the bottom, not by the top, but it is solid. Nothing rattles, nothing moves. It is very, very well built, very well designed, very well thought out. Speaking of moving it around, in order to move it to different locations, I had to unplug it from power, and I wasn't sure what would happen if it lost power for any reason. Unplugged it, I moved it, I plugged it in, it turned right back on, and immediately I was greeted with a screen that said, you know, do you want to resume process or something like that? It was a yes or no. I said yes, and it picked up right where it left off mid-fermentation. So power loss, having to move it and unplug it for a short period of time, non-issue on the unit. It picks up right where it leaves off. The other neat thing that is kind of a pro for the unit in general is that it makes it very easy to share beer. Beer is a social beverage. You want to enjoy it with your friends. And so to be able to throw something in and have it ready in 9 days and immediately carbonated or immediately ready to share a couple of pints with your buddies for a barbecue, or if you got people coming over, you do it a movie night, whatever, is amazing. And you could actually have it that fresh in your own home. I thought that was a great feature of it. It's also kind of cool because it's one of those things where I think it's a conversation piece, right? So someone comes over, it's aesthetically pleasing to look at,
but what is this? You know,
you can't help but look at it and not want to pour a pint from it.
100%.
So it is a conversation piece. It is something that you can look at and see. Now, there were a couple of issues that we did run into with it. And a lot of this, as I'm going to mention in a second, could be because they are just launching this and there's more development, more work to be done. But there are some things to be aware of with it. Obviously, cost is a big one. It is a premium product. It is not a cheap product by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think dollar for dollar, compared to some other systems, it's actually competitively priced. And I believe that includes one beer kit with your initial purchase. Additional beer kits are $20 each, which isn't really too bad on a cost per bottle perspective, but it isn't the cheapest option out there. But if you want to go cheaper, you have to go with a bigger setup. You have to go all green. There's more of an equipment investment in it to kind of do the trade-off. So $20 for a kit actually isn't that bad. They do have a subscription model as well, which is kind of neat. Currently, as of the time of this video, there's only 3 kits currently on the market. There's an amber, there's a pale ale, and there's a wheat ale. There is a stout, I think I saw on the website, that should be coming. I believe they are producing more, or they're developing more of the recipe kits. And if they're all as good as this one, and if they have a lot of them, this is a great way to go through and do some very quick, surefire recipes and awesome beer. But there are only 3 currently on the market. Which is a little bit limiting. Speaking of the kits, you're supposed to be able to brew your own beer from it, and that's, I think they called it master mode, and I'm still waiting to hear back on what the development of that is. I think if they opened that up as part of it, that would be huge, because then not only do you have the kits to kind of try and see, once you get that brewing bug, you can then kick in your own recipes and design things, and you can get malt extract from any homebrew shop or online retailers. Always support local, though. The hop extracts, I don't think are quite as common as regular hops, the pellet hops, but I think it's becoming more prevalent. I would be curious to see if iGulu, in addition to their kits, will also begin to provide the hop extracts and the malt extracts for your own recipes. So stay tuned for that as we go. The other drawback is it is extract only. You cannot do all grain. You can't do brew in a bag. There's a no boil aspect to it. So you really are limited with the amount of ingredients you can use. You cannot just use any hop out there on the market. You can only use whatever hop extracts are available. Malt extract isn't necessarily a problem because they've had those for many, many years, and there's a wide range. So you do get some flexibility, but there are some styles that you probably won't be able to brew with this, like a oatmeal stout as an example, which requires some of those specialty grains like the oatmeal, at least in a steeping capacity. So you're going to be limited by the styles, but the flexibility and the speed of it, I think, kind of outweighs that. And if you're really wanting that kind of beer, then you need to be doing a different system. This isn't a system for you. This is very quick, very easy, very tasty, but it is limiting with what you're able to do with it. The app. Let's talk about the app. I was excited for the app. I downloaded it, I scanned it. The setup, using it to set up the iGulu and do the updates and things was super fast and easy. But honestly, that was where the usefulness kind of ended. The paper directions said to make sure you're using the manual in the app. But when I went to load it, I got an error message. It would not load, and that's why I had to rely on that paper manual during the brew day, because the app just was not loading. Also, half of the screens are in Chinese, I'm assuming. I don't read the calligraphy that's there. I don't know what language it is. I'm assuming it's Chinese. But a lot of the stuff, especially the custom fermentation profiles you're looking at, is all Chinese. So that doesn't really help us when we're trying to use the app. I know there's updates coming. I know they're still developing it. There's a lot of cool features coming. But from an app standpoint right now, if you're buying the machine, I would stay away from the app. You can do everything necessary on the screen of the iGulu. The app needs some more work and some more development. Let's talk about their customer service. During our brew day, we chatted on the website because we had a question about the priming sugar, which was not obviously listed in directions anywhere. We didn't know necessarily what to do with it. There was nothing in the manual. There was nothing on the package. It didn't tell us what to do. I messaged them. They didn't respond. Obviously, it's the weekend. Well, we messaged them on a Sunday. We didn't actually get a response to our chat until Wednesday, which was a little disappointing, and I don't know if it's because the people that are monitoring the chat currently aren't necessarily brewing support, but more sales support. So it could have taken them more time. The other factor could be too that CES was going on. I think their entire crew was at CES, and so they didn't have the staff necessarily to monitor some of these questions that come through, and ours might have been the first brewing related question that come through the chat. I don't know, but that was a little disappointing. But again, it's a new product that they're launching, and I'm sure they're going to work through and figure that out. But that was a little bit lacking Their email response has been fantastic, but the chat, not so much. And then finally, let's talk about the instructions. I like to think of myself as a relatively intelligent person, but there was conflicting information if you were reading the package of ingredients versus the manual, versus the website. There's conflicting information on different points. And I think that's just too many departments and divisions, maybe not having everything lined up as it should be. So some of the stuff was a little confusing from a brewing standpoint, how things work, what it does, what it has. And so that was a little disappointing for such a premium product. We were able to figure it out. It honestly wasn't a big deal. And like we said before, we tend to be very critical with these reviews, but that was definitely something that wasn't super streamlined. And if you're a new brewer and someone that's never brewed before, I think that's a critical component that needs to be worked on, because that would potentially cause you to mess up a recipe of a beer or not be able to use the unit to its full potential. So that was a little disappointing. So I did email iGulu, and I'm still waiting for a response back. Again, it's the weekend, so I don't fault them for not responding yet, and they've been very responsive via email. But I had additional questions on master mode, like when is that going to be enabled? When is the app going to be updated so we can actually use the full features and the functionality of it? Are they planning on selling ingredients so you can do your own recipes? Are you required to source your own? The CO2 tank is another good example. It doesn't ship with a CO2 tank, and they give you the technical specs of what the tank needs to have. But if you're not familiar with CO2 tanks or high pressure vessels, that can be a little tricky. It's compatible with the SodaStream tanks, which that took some fiddling to get to work, and that's my fault, not theirs. But they don't really source a vendor, and they don't really sell the tanks, so you have to kind of figure that out separately. And if you're brewing a beer and you want it carbonated, you really shouldn't be pushing it with air. Not a good idea. It will stale faster and ruin what is potentially a beautiful beer. And speaking of the CO2, when I first hooked the tank up, there's a little pressure meter that would not engage. And I had the thing screwed down. I couldn't figure out. There's a little switch underneath that says on this way, off this way. I turn it on, nothing happens. Turn it off, nothing happens. It took me a good 30 minutes of fiddling with it, and I realized it's not a switch. It's a knob. So you go to on, nothing happens. You keep turning that same direction, another rotation, and then I heard the tank hiss. The pressure gauge popped up, and then I had pressure. So I thought I'd done something wrong, or maybe the tank wasn't compatible. Turns out the directions were a little confusing. Once you figure it out, again, it's easy, it's self-explanatory. But for a new brewer that's not used to it, that says it's one switch on, it's not working, that could definitely be a problem. The other question I did ask was about tracking fermentation via CO2. Stay tuned for that if they do adjust the schedule based on how fermentation is progressing. And if it does, that's fantastic. And I want to confirm, is there a heater in here that will warm up a fermentation? I don't believe there is, but as I mentioned before, some of the reviewers have said that there is a heater in there. I could find no sign of it, and I don't know if that's correct. Waiting to hear it from iGulu to find out if it truly does have that. When we find out more, we'll definitely let you know. We're definitely going to do some more brewing of the other kits and let you know how those come out and some of our learnings. All right, so I've talked a bunch on my thoughts on it, Kristy. I really got to play with it for the 12 days and things. Is there anything that you wanted to add from your perspective as far as the iGulu itself?
It's definitely something for me and my demographic. I wouldn't have a problem or any hesitation in purchasing it. It is a little bit spendy, but at the same time, I'm not the brewer that's going to build their own system or their own brew stand. I do like the process of brewing. That being said, just to be able to throw some ingredients into a system and have it brew beer. I like the fact that I can't necessarily get to the nearest brew store easily. So it's almost like a subscription service where if you're with someone that's like Amazon and you do subscribe and save and all that, like it's kind of nice that you don't actually have to, once you get the unit, you don't have to actually go get ingredients. You can basically just have it shipped to your place. I think the convenience is amazing. I also think that if you don't necessarily want to drink beer all the time, supposedly you're able to do sparkling water. You're maybe supposed to do kombucha, I think.
I'd heard kombucha.
Yeah.
I thought I heard wine. Other fermented beverages.
Right. So I think if that's the case, then I feel like it's just a world of opportunity. Even if you don't necessarily want to drink beer all the time, you can do other things too.
That's true. That does open up the flexibility. We forgot about that. We're testing it from a strictly beer making standpoint, but to be able to do kombucha, to be able to do other adult beverages on it, kombucha is more of a health benefit, really.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, you could definitely have some fun with it. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our video on our first brew day with the iGulu F1. It was very interesting and enlightening to say the least. Stay tuned for other brewing videos coming out and some tips and tricks with the unit as we continue to put it through its paces and talk about the benefits and some of the drawbacks. Catch you later, my friends.